From the Ghost Tactical Productions studio, welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast. And now your host, Trey Miller.
Let's start out today with a nice quote from Alan Dershowitz. Foolish liberals who are trying to read the Second Amendment out of the Constitution by claiming it's an individual right or that it's too much of a safety hazard don't see the danger of the big picture. They're courting disaster by encouraging others to use the same means to eliminate portions of the Constitution they don't like. And welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast. I am your host, Trey Miller with Ghost Tactical Productions. Thanks again for joining us this week, and we're going to dive into what it means to be an armed citizen from a different point of view this week, and we've got a very special guest with us this week. It's Michael Woodland from MW Tactical. He is an Army veteran. He is a concealed carry and training instructor, and he is also the co-host and review specialist for the Black Man with a Gun podcast with the Reverend Kenn Blanchard. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So let me get your background a little bit. We obviously, I know a lot about you. You're a sit on a lot of my shows, and we sit on a lot of panels together on other shows. But for the people out there that aren't familiar with who you are and what your background is, why don't you kind of give everybody a little bit about who you are?
Just a normal person who likes to shoot guns, who like to instruct people, help people get better. And in the process, I like to get better and do stuff like product reviews, do podcasts. I love to talk about issues relating to the 2A community. Like you said before, retired military after 22 years, retired last year. And shooting is my passion.
So the first question I really want to ask you is, when you hear the words armed citizen, what do those words initially mean to you?
Armed citizen really means to me somebody who is ready to exercise their Second Amendment rights, but at the same time, they're a contributor to the ongoing education for society as a whole, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, like I said, you are not only a veteran, but you are also an instructor. And when you're giving concealed carry classes or whatever classes, you're giving that day, how much of the responsibility of being a responsible gun owner goes into your teaching?
95%. A class is just not pulling the trigger. It is literally a conversation to get viewpoints, to broaden people's minds, open them up to the topic of carrying a gun, because it's just not cool to carry a gun. You have to understand what your responsibility is, how much power you actually possess, and the control you have to endure to actually be an armed citizen.
In South Carolina, are the gun laws, are they restrictive towards gun owners? Or are they pretty lenient? Or how would you describe the temperature of the gun laws in South Carolina for gun owners?
I consider South Carolina to be a gun-friendly state, whereas you don't get looked down for having a gun or getting training of any such. So you can always talk to somebody and you'll have an open conversation relating to firearms. Not to say like everybody in South Carolina is pro-gun, but you have people here just like everywhere else who are anti-gun and pro-gun, but the state as a whole is more gun-friendly for everybody.
Now, I know that you are a father and you've got a young daughter, and she's a beautiful young girl. I've seen pictures of her before. How does being a gun guy, how does she look at your dad? Does she realize that you are entrenched in the culture of the gun community, or does she just see dad?
I think she just sees dad with a gun. That's normal for her. She doesn't understand the politics of all the research I do, all the people I talk to, and everything I do, and the extent of the 2A community. So what she normally sees is, okay, let's go to the mall. Okay, let's go to the mall. You got peace? Yes, I got peace. Okay, let's go. That's how she views it.
She calls it peace?
Yeah, because I address it to her as the peacemaker.
I love it. That's great. If you're going to do it, do it right. The peacemaker.
Exactly.
Love it.
So she's 4 right now. And the only thing I've been doing with her is just talking with her. So what do you do when you see a firearm laying around? I don't touch it. I go get daddy or an adult. Like, okay. So that's where we are right now. But here in the next coming months, probably after Christmas sometime, now we're going to go ahead and get into the whole, the 4 firearm safety rules, getting a water gun and actually going through the motions.
Awesome. Now, do you remember the first time that you started shooting and how old you were and what kind of got you into firearms?
So, of course, when I had fired my first firearm, I was about 13, 14 years old, and it was with my father. And the first firearm I shot was a shotgun.
So he went straight to the shotgun. I like it.
Yeah, well, you also have to remember how I grew up is a different America because I grew up in a city, so I
Right.
wasn't like privy to the country setting until my father came and got me. And then we went to my uncle's house in North Carolina, who was rural country. But where I grew up at, it was always, hey, stay away from guns. Guns going to get you in trouble. So of course, I already knew the good and the bad, what you can do with it. But the lifestyle of the street life, it never really appealed to me, but guns did. But I knew how to carry one. I knew how to hold one. I just didn't know how to properly shoot it until I got older.
Right. So growing up in the city setting and the urban setting and all of that. Now, obviously, you said you just went to North Carolina out in the rural areas sometimes with your dad and your uncle to shoot some different things. But growing up, were guns prevalent in a negative way? Did you see guns or were guns used in a negative way where you grew up?
Yes, pretty much. Like when you look at a movie and you look at the drug dealer, it was an environment like that. So when I was a kid, I saw somebody get shot for lying to somebody. Like somebody lied to somebody, they got shot. What was the
Oh,
reason he
wow.
got shot for? He lied to him. Oh wow, okay, cool. All right.
Real.
Yeah. And then one thing that really sticks out in my mind was there was a group of guys that I went to high school with in Virginia. They was going around robbing a certain restaurant, and I don't want to say the restaurant's name or these people's name, but they eventually got caught and did time and everything.
Well, I
Um,
think it's really interesting to hear of someone. I grew up in Dallas and I grew up in the suburbs. So, I mean, violence and crime, obviously everywhere has violence, everyone has crime, but it wasn't to the state that we ever felt unsafe and all of that. So it's interesting to hear from someone that kind of saw different things and you were exposed to death. You were exposed to that lifestyle at an early age. And it's fascinating to me to hear that those experiences did not turn you away or turn you off from guns. So, what was your experience when you joined the Army?
Going to my uncle's house, he had a lot of guns. So he'll give you a history breakdown. Like the first handgun I shot was the little I think it was a Beretta. It was like the one from the James Bond movie, the real small one, real compact one.
Yeah,
Um I can't even think of the name of it right now, but
I
that
think
was the
that
first
was it
handgun.
the Walther like PPQ or something.
Yeah, it was something small like that. I just remember him saying like, "This is the one James Bond shot movie," and I was like, "Oh,
Okay, yeah,
cool. Let me hold it."
yeah,
you know. So I went ahead and shot a couple rounds through it, and then shot the 30-06. I mean
that'll
30
get you.
30. Yeah, oh yeah, that'll get you all day. And then the shotgun, but the only thing he didn't have was like an AR-15. But you had the 357 Magnum that took my arm off practically.
Oh, yeah.
um, and then I shot a 40, and then like the 38. It was like a bunch of stuff. He had a table full of guns, and I literally tried to shoot everything.
So, was your mom aware that when you were with your dad and your uncle that there was a chance that you were going to be shooting guns? And if so, did she okay that? Did she just kind of say, "Hey, as long as you're not bringing them home," or what was her thoughts on you shooting guns?
Nah, I really don't remember, but I really didn't care. So my mom was one of those type people. My dad'll say red, she'll say blue. What I'm saying?
I understand. I understand.
'Cause, like I moved out from my mom at an early age and went to go live with my dad. You know.
So your next stage in life was joining the Army, and you spent, like you said, 22 years in the Army. What did you do in the Army, and what was your experience while in the Army with firearms?
When I joined the Army, I joined in as infantry. When I retired as infantry. So I did 22 years on the infantry platform, all the way from private to platoon sergeant, retired as a sergeant first class. One of the driving forces that drove me to being a good marksman was the bias that I received at my first duty station. So I think that was the driving point for me to be better than everybody else when it came to shooting. So the story went, my first duty station, they was doing blind auditions for the sniper section. And of course, when they call you to the tower, and they were specifically looking at my paper, and my team leader and squad leader, they kept telling me, like, man, you got this. We might be losing you here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I was like, well, what do you mean losing me? Because I just got to Colorado, Fort Carson. And they was like, yeah, so this right here is a blind audition, even though they're looking at it as grouping and zero exercise before you go to qualification. So I was like, oh, okay. And then they explained it to me like, okay, if you leave, you're going to the sniper section because you're shooting the way they're looking for, what they're looking for. So I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I guess that's a good thing. And they was like, man, that's a great thing. Then of course, when we got to the base of the tower, the guy literally kept looking at the paper, looking at me. And I was like, oh crap, here we go. And their excuse for not selecting me was because I was an E3 at that time, was if they told me to pull the trigger on somebody, I would probably have an issue doing it. And I'm sitting there like, okay, but we're not at war right now. And this was back in 95. We're not at war right now. So obviously you would train me up and get me to the point where you think I should be, but I don't think it'll be a problem for me doing my job because I'll do whatever I'm told, and then obviously something else was said. And I remember my squad leader telling me to go sit on the bleachers. And when I was walking to the bleachers, I didn't even look back. I just remember the arguing back and forth, like, yeah, no, no. And I was like, oh, wow, squad leader's actually sticking up for me. That's a good thing. And then that was my driving force from then on out, as far as every unit I went to, how I applied shooting, to my drive.
In my experiences in the Marine Corps, I always enjoyed the training aspect of that, and I enjoyed learning. I was not one that was privy to many firearms growing up, and I'd gone to a couple summer camps and had some friends that had some land that hunted. So I'd shot some 22 and I'd shot a couple shotguns growing up, but I had very minimal experience growing up with firearms, and my love for firearms really didn't start until I got to the Marine Corps, and we went to second phase of boot camp, which is up at Camp Pendleton, and we learned to fire the AR-15 platform, which we called at that time the M16A2. We were prior to the M4 and all that, but we use the M16A2. And I believe probably you're in the same time, so you probably are very familiar with that same platform.
Correct.
But, my love for firearms really didn't start till then. Once you got to the Army, did you enjoy the tactical side of the training the Army provided, or did you more or less like the sniper side? When I say sniper, what I mean is the stable, non-moving, shooting at target from long distance, but there's not a whole lot of moving. Or did you like the more physical, room clearing, the squad movements? Did you like the tactical side of that stuff?
I love the tactical side of it. If you get in touch with any one of my leaders, they would all tell you, like, I was the spearhead when it came to training. I was always asking questions. I was always like drawing different diagrams to get a better picture. Especially like when I became team leader and squad leader, I implemented what I wanted, which was I felt was more effective because, everything is always taught out of the manual, and the manual was pretty much written from World War I and II in Vietnam, but nothing progressed since then other than small changes. By then, we had already stepped into Iraq. So now you got to use your imagination to be safe and everything to become effective.
When you first went overseas as a young man that was thrown into a situation that you didn't know if you were coming home, Was that something you looked forward to? Were you nervous? Were you scared? What were your initial thoughts when you found out, hey, I'm getting ready to go?
I kept an open mind. I really didn't know what to expect. And of course, I was always talking to my father because he was in Vietnam, and he just pretty much say, rely on your training, trust in your leaders. That's what he just kept instilling it to me. He never said anything negative to me. He never told me, hey, well, when I was over there, I did this. He just kept it positive. Trust in your training, have confidence in your training and the guys that you train. But at the same time, you know, follow what your leaders tell you, trust your leaders. And that's what I did when I went over there, So I really wasn't scared until we actually started rolling. That's when fear set in for me. And then when we hit the first city, that's when like, oh, wow, this is real. Okay, cool. And then it was hard for me to go to sleep because it was like every
not like the movies portray, is it?
No, nothing like that. I mean, I'm petrified. And if anybody told you they was over there and they wasn't scared, they are lying. And I could attest to that.
That's right. You've got to rely on your brothers. You look to your left and to your right. You've got to lay your life in their hands as they lay their life in yours. And that's an awesome responsibility. But you're also fighting an enemy that to history has shown that they don't care if they die. And if they do die, they usually take a lot of people with them. So it was a different warfare than what America probably had ever experienced, is when you're fighting a religious jihad, so they call it. And we are the enemy, and they don't care how many they take with them. It's a whole different mentality. And anyone, like you said, if anyone ever says they weren't scared or nervous or felt like they were unprepared for a little bit, they're lying. Now, like you said, what you have to do is understand that you've been training for a while. You do have to rely on your leaders, and not just your leaders, but you have to rely on your brothers and sisters in that situation. But you got to rely on your brothers to sit there and say, look, I'm going to get you home. You get me home. Mm-hmm. And that's the mentality that you almost have to have. So let's transition from the military, and you retire 22 years and you get back into civilian life. How did becoming a firearms instructor, was that something that you had planned prior to retiring, or how did that come about?
Munitions weapons tactical, it literally was something totally different from the start.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So now you got to back up to 2013. I'm stationed at Fort Benning, working at the combative school, and we had a lot of downtime. So the group of people that I was hanging out with at the combative school, it was probably about 4 of us. Okay. So when you look at all of us that's working here, so we got 3 infantry guys, we got a medic, right? But the 3 infantry guys, we all have different interests in regards to a talent we have. So I was like, okay, so then let's do this. We can come across a stage front, whereas we can teach somebody how to shoot a firearm, handgun and rifle, AR platform. Teach a medical asset, whereas it's just first aid or first responder in a combat type situation before and after an incident. And then we can also do the fighting portion, whereas we teach somebody basic skills on if they don't know how to fight, but just something small where they can get away from somebody, or go through a whole jiu-jitsu platform like we teach, in the military, level 1 combatives at that time. And I saw the light bulbs go off on everybody's head, and I was like, yep, got them. We can do this, right? Because all I need is 3 people with me. We can make this happen,
Right. Exactly.
And we sat down and we came up with start coming up with curriculums of how we was going to do stuff. And I even told them okay, so after we get everything together, how we need to do it, we need to go ahead and find a couple people and just give them a free class and put it in perspective like that. So we know what kinks we need to work on, take in or take out, make it better, or just take something out if it doesn't make sense. Of course, I was already 3 steps ahead of everybody because now I'm already looking at how to develop a website. What all we got to do from a business perspective. Insurance you got to have. certain type of certifications we need to have to cover us for the insurance reasons. When I started asking for the money, whatever the dollar amount was, everybody pulled out. So I was like, hey, don't worry about it. I mean, it's all good. Surprise. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. I got it. I'm just going to go ahead and do an instruction with firearms. It worked out for me far as becoming better with instructing on a civilian platform because, military, we just, hey, the next exercise I will name and explain and have demonstrated is, we just go through the spill, it's already rehearsed and practiced. But from just becoming a natural instructor, how can I relate the information to you? Okay. Because I already know some people are visual, some people are audio. So I got to learn how to talk to two or the actual three different ways to get somebody to understand, what I'm trying to say.
I think that a lot of people in our position sometimes lose track and they forget that we have even a bigger responsibility to the gun community and the Second Amendment and if we can make a positive reaction to them the first time they hear or see something about firearms, then that is our ultimate responsibility to help them to come to our side and understand that we are normal law-abiding citizens that respect, reserve, and acknowledge and love the fact that we have the right to bear arms. That being said, I think it's our responsibility also to show them that we're not crazy. We're not what the typical gun person is. And what the typical gun person is the crazy people that go shoot the place up. And a lot of us out here are normal law-abiding. We're fathers, we're mothers, we are sons, daughters, brothers, sisters that have normal lives, normal jobs, and all of that. So I want to start talking a little bit about the social media and being a Second Amendment activist and media content creator. And how did you kind of get involved with taking MW Tactical, just not from a training standpoint, but a media conglomerate? And how did you get hooked up with the Black Man with a Gun podcast with Reverend Kenn Blanchard?
So this was back in 2015 that Ken had reached out to me and he stated he wanted to do an interview. He came across my website, read up a little bit about me. And because I was only doing competitions then. So we sat there, we did the interview. And about 6 months after that interview, he contacted me and he specifically stated that he wanted to change up the show and he wanted to bring some different flavor to it. Whereas he wanted to have a tip segment. So I was like, okay. And I was like, why me? And he was like, I went back and I listened to the interview and you have a voice for radio. And I want to capitalize on that if you will allow me to. Now, fast forward from that moment, 6 months after the initial interview that he gave me, I'm still with him. So now I went from just doing the tips and review segment to being a co-host. So he kind of lets me share my ideas with him. So the idea of me being a co-host, I literally talked to him for about a year before that transpired. And the first time we did it, he got like an overwhelming amount of response from it. And he started sending me like some of the snippets from like the voicemails he got. He showed me some of the emails and he was like, hey, you might be onto something. And I was like, I think I am, man. I think I am. So let's just go with it for a little bit and see how it plays out. And now we do it every week.
Being a co-host of Black Man with a Gun, just by the name of that podcast, brings a certain light to the gun community. Do you and Ken both feel a certain responsibility to portray the Black culture and the Black man with a gun culture as positive, or do you just talk about your experiences and let people think what they think?
I think when Ken came up with the concept, he just looked at it like, hey, I'm a guy, I'm a man who is Black into this gun culture who is not really accepted, but by a small few. Let me share my experience with you. That's how I look at it. Now, how he answers it, I can't speak for him, but that's how I view it when I listen to the show and the conversations we have. When I perceive it on my own accord, I just look at it as the Black Man with the Gun is a podcast that's by a Black guy that's always talking positive stuff that opens the doors and your ideas to something else you can do. It's like we try to tackle everything, but I never talk anything of race with Kenn, and the most, just like with you, the only thing we've ever talked about race is the bias that was given to me. I was always taught, don't stoop down to that level. You figure out a way to take the positive out of it and continue to move forward.
You've been around some of what I would consider the black leaders inside the gun community. You've been around Kevin Dixie, obviously Kenn, Coleon Noir, all of these people that are what are considered to be the face of the black man with a gun, no pun intended. Mm-hmm. But do you feel that people still look at you differently, or has the gun community as you know it kind of moved on past the color of your skin and accepted you as just one of the guys?
We can look at it one or two ways. I'm 6'5", 210 pounds.
They're probably not going to mess with you anyways, are they?
Exactly. So I'm already getting looks like, oh, this is a big joker, right? Yeah. There was one range I went to up in Virginia, and this was like around the time frame when my grandmother passed away. And I just did it just so I can keep my mind clear and not get stressed out behind anything. And this guy literally pulled the group of people over to the side and was like, hey, if y'all keep that BS up, I'm going to tell all y'all to go home and everybody else can have fun. I specifically heard him say that to a group of about 6 or 7 people, so I was just like, and when he walked back over to me, I was just like, hey, I appreciate that. And he was like, nah, man, it's just about, you're out here trying to have fun just like the rest of us. Let's have fun. I was like, all right, let's have it. And then, so, I mean, it happens, man. It's just, but it's a matter of your reaction is going to be pretty much how the outcome of it is.
Mike, you are involved in so many different things. Not only are you doing the instruction, but you're doing the podcast and you're doing the video reviews and you're doing your own media content. Where do you see Michael Woodland and MW Tactical 1 year and 5 years down the road?
1 year down the road, I pretty much see myself in the same position because I don't look at myself as a celebrity. And a lot of people address me as a celebrity. So, number one, I never look at myself as a celebrity. Like I said, 1 year from now, I see me doing the same thing with more people probably contacting me in regards to, hey, I want to get your perspective on this product. I'm going to send this to you. All right. And then we talk about how long it'll take me to do it. Like, okay, cool. So like a lot of stuff you see me do product review on, I've had a lot of stuff for maybe 3 or 4 months before I even talked about it, only because I want to play with it to give an honest assessment of it.
Now, what part of the social media realm that you're in with MW Tactical do you enjoy the most? Is it doing the podcast? Is it doing the reviews? What exactly is it, going to SHOT Shows or some of these other organizational industry meetings, or what exactly is the most exciting for you?
So the most exciting thing for me probably is the podcast, then product reviews. The one thing I really don't like about the product review is the video, because, I try to get creative with that and not do the same thing everybody else is doing. So, how everybody turns the camera on and they're just talking in front of the camera. So I try to change it up a little bit, whereas I'll record myself and I'll do like a little skit. I'll throw a little bit of humor in there,
Oh yeah, but, you gotta do that.
Yeah, but
you can't take yourself too seriously in this business, I
don't take myself serious anyway. But yeah, so like I said, podcasting is probably my number one, my favorite. Product review is probably number 2. But now to back up to your other question, 5 years from now, I plan on being on a platform where it's like if something happens, the news media will actually contact me and, say, hey, we want to get your perspective of this. The NRA calls me and say, hey, we want to get you on this show so we can hear what you got to say or talk about whatever you're doing. Like, okay, cool.
So 1 to 5 years, you still plan on being in the social media game with the Second Amendment and the firearm community. Have you had any interest or already experience of trying to help new content creators that are just starting out Have you had the chance to kind of mentor any of these people? And especially if they're other black men with guns or black women with guns that see you or Kevin Dixie or Coleon or any of these guys or Kenn Blanchard and say, if they can do it, then I can do it. Is that something you would like to see more of, or are you just wanting to spread the message of the Second Amendment in general?
I'm more like you. If everybody just picks up either a microphone or a camera, get out there and do it, because you might say something that I'm totally missing to get something actually going, getting the movement going stronger. You can't be scared of failing, because failing is going to be that referee that's going to make you be better.
Exactly.
So that's how it plays out in my mind. Failure is the referee.
And I tell you what, I tell a lot of people that might be looking to do some product reviews that either don't have the opportunity to get it sent to them or can't afford to buy it themselves. There is a great opportunity if you go to a local gun shop and you are happen to be familiar or at least comfortable enough to talk to the manager or the owner of that gun shop, and you talk to them and say, hey, once a month or twice a month, I'd like to maybe display and feature a product, whether it's a gun or a holster or, an AR-15 furniture kit or, whatever it is. And you might call it the ABC Gun Shop featured product of the month. And you go in and you shoot that video in the gun shop. So not only are you helping promote the gun shop, they're probably going to allow you to do reviews on products at their shop, because they're getting almost a commercial out of it, but yet you're not spending any money on those products, and it has honestly an unlimited amount of supplies of whatever you're wanting to do. So if you're out there looking for products to review and you're not able to get it sent to you or you can't afford it, go contact one of your local gun shops. I'm sure that they'd be more than happy to let you do a review at their shop, mention their name, give them a little love and a little publicity. You'll never know what you're able to get if you just ask. So, there's always ways to get around not being able to get items sent to you. Now, Mike, I want to put you on the hot seat for a little bit. I want to ask you a couple questions. We're going to just ask a couple questions about your daily gun carry life. Question number 1 is, what is your everyday carry, both gun and holster?
My everyday carry is the same firearm you see me shooting in all my videos, handgun, which is a Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm. The holster that I carry on the regular is one that my buddy made for me. It's a Kydex holster, and it's almost like it carries the firearm, but it also carries an extra magazine, and that's the reason why I enjoy carrying that one more.
And you can go into your military days or whatever. What's your favorite rifle that you've had a chance to shoot in your lifetime?
Through my lifetime is probably the AR-15 platform, whether it be a M4, A2, you know what I'm saying? It's the AR.
Yeah, the platform itself, yeah. If you could give one piece of advice for someone who is thinking about becoming and buying a gun for the first time and getting into the gun culture, what would that piece of advice be?
Take your time, figure out what works for you. Don't go for what everybody else is doing. Be yourself.
I like it. And the last question is ammo cost of the gun itself are no object. It doesn't matter. What is your dream gun?
Actually, I'm carrying my dream gun.
There you go. So you when you say you're an M&P fanboy, you are an M&P fanboy. Now you're talking the M&P full size. Are you shooting the 2.0 or the original M&P?
Yeah, I'm still on generation 1. I'm saving up right now to get the M 2.0. But what I normally do is I'll buy the handgun stock and then I'll send it off to get work done to it.
Right. Well, Mike, you and I have gotten to know each other very well the last several months, and I do consider you one of my dear friends of this world, even though we never met. So I can't wait to actually finally meet you in person and all that. Now you're 6'5" and I am not so much. So it might be a Mutt and Jeff situation, as you well know. But the biggest thing is, I think you and I we think very similarly on a lot of issues. We don't take life very seriously. We like to have a good time, but we do take guns and the Second Amendment very seriously. So I want to kind of give you a few minutes to talk about any of the projects that you're working on and give some plugs to people out there that haven't been introduced to your stuff.
Yes. So the one most important thing that I want to do is talk about the campaign that I started. And if everyone right now can either pick up your phone or go to your computer and just type in gofundme.com/M-W tactical, read up and look at the video on there, what we're doing. So basically right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get 3 deputy sheriffs into jiu-jitsu training for a year. That's not going to cost them anything or the department. So all the money we're raising is going specifically to the projects that we're about to talk about. Right now, we already raised enough money to get 1 deputy sheriff into training. So we're trying to raise enough funds to get the 2 more deputy sheriffs into training. We did a review on, if you go to YouTube and type in M-W Tactical, you'll see the title of that video is Giving Back as a Whole. And that pretty much talks about what I'm talking about right now. Then we want to go ahead and start a summer youth camp for the children, whereas we need to buy some necessary equipment so we can be effective with training the children over the course where it won't cost the parents anything. So it's just kids will come, they get the training, and that's it. Because a lot of people don't understand that your child can go to school on a scholarship for shooting. So if you know this now, wouldn't you want your child at a younger age, starting about 5, 6 years old, to start shooting? And then the last thing I want to do is do community involvement and get people out to vote. I think that's the one thing that's hurting our society as a whole, across the platform, across the nation, whereas there has been a negative connotation around voting, whereas people honestly believe that your vote doesn't matter. Well, if your vote didn't matter as you say it doesn't matter, how come there are people trying to curtail the way you vote, coming up with all these different regulations on voting? So let's get people more involved into their community and start, getting people to the polls, because now the more people who go out and vote, now these politicians are not going to take advantage of, oh, I'm just going to tell you this so I can get in the office. Now that I'm in office, I can do what I want to do. Hold them accountable for what they say. And the way you do it is you got to get everybody actively involved into it.
And I think it's a wonderful thing that you are getting so involved in the community. And it's nice to see that you're not just about the guns, you're about the community, and you see the world in a much bigger place than just the 2A community, because we all have our, joys and our hobbies that are outside guns. But what brings us together as friends was started out with guns. And it's nice to see what you're doing out there in the community, not only with the sheriff's deputies, but trying to get the youth involved, and then trying to get people to get out and vote, especially this year, guys. The midterm elections this November are crucial at all levels, local, state, and federal. So I love what you're doing, and thank you so much. Now, I'm assuming if people want to get a hold of you through your social media, your website is www.m-wtactical.com. Are all of your social media links over there where you can get a hold of you and watch all your stuff?
Yes. So if you go to the website, you can click on the Facebook icon, the Twitter icon, the Instagram icon. If you go to YouTube, just type in M-W Tactical, and then you'll see the logo and then the videos with me on them, of course. But also, if you want to give me a call, you can call me at 803-250-1256 or email me at info@m-wtactical.com.
You and I talk a lot all the time, but it's nice to kind of sit down and get some of the backstory. And I thought I knew a lot about you, but I've learned so much more in this time that we've had together, and it makes me respect you even more. So thank you for joining the podcast, guys. Like I said, if you haven't checked him out, go to his website, www.m-wtactical.com. You can find not only his social media links, but you can find all of the stuff that he's doing with Black Man with a Gun, with his GoFundMe in the community. go help and support this GoFundMe if you can, especially in the Columbia, South Carolina area. So, Mike, I want to say thank you once again for joining. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and I can't wait to see you soon, brother. And I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, no problem. You can have me anytime you like. Just give me a call. I'm there for you.
Sounds great. Well, guys, once again, thanks for listening to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. This has been the Armed Citizen Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Armed Citizen Podcast. To check out our full lineup of pro-gun media content, including our product reviews, live shows, and other Second Amendment activity, please check out our website, www.ghosttacticalproductions.com.